Good afternoon, Wargamers. My name is Mechrat, and welcome to my own in-depth and competitive analysis of the Skaven Index for 4th edition. I'm exceptionally excited about this one because I myself am a Skaven main, the primary of my armies. I bet you couldn't tell from my name, but I do happen to like the rats just a little bit. We got rat men with sticks, huge Franken rat monstrosities with nail guns strapped to their arms, and rolling hamster wheels of death. You're in for a good time, a Skaven time. So grab your warpstone and duct tape, let's have some fun. Before getting into the meat of the video, I want to say just a few notes. In terms of competitive viability, I would say we're alright, not too great, but not bad at all. However, we are very difficult to play. Mastering the complex and tech-filled playstyle of the Skaven takes hours of practice and dozens of games, and hopefully this guide will give you a head start and help you stay a few claw steps ahead of your opponents. And no, I will not torture you by using any horrible rat speak in this video. I really don't like it and it hurts my voice. Since this is the first one in the series with no bias at all, I want to go over the structure of these videos. I will talk about the allegiance abilities and enhancements first with useful notes and tips on the screen, then I will cover the war scrolls with more tips and suggested power pairs, and then I will end with example lists and a rating system covering the army's strengths and weaknesses. Fair warning, there is a lot of content to cover here, so this video will probably be pretty long. So, let's begin by talking about the allegiance abilities. These are more gameplay enabling and less free buffs. You'll see what I mean. Skaven traditionally is an army that strength comes from synergies and tactical play, and that shows up very clearly in the following abilities. I'm also going to cover the Gnaw Hole and its war scroll here since it ties in heavily with the allegiance abilities. First up is the Lurking Vermintide and Gnaw Hole Ambush. Essentially, these two are just a useful deep strike through our gnaw holes. It's really good, I mean it's great. It allows Skaven to keep their squishy units underground and protected, and it's better than other deep strikes because of Splinters of the Vermin Doom, which lets you actively place gnaw holes throughout the game, at the start of every battle round. This means you get some quality control over where your deep strikers and teleporters can come out, since the gnaw holes just have to be outside of 9 inches of enemy units and anywhere on the battlefield. There's no more wholly within 6 inches of the board or wholly within 8 inches of the board edge restriction. The best part of this ability is that you get to place the gnaw holes after the active player is chosen for the battle round. This means that you as the Skaven player get a lot of control over how aggressive or reserved that you want to play. Another thing I want to mention is using gnaw holes as bait. Some armies, especially slow ones, really can't afford to go and attack your gnaw holes even though they may want to. You can use that knowledge to put your opponent in a tough place and give them difficult choices throughout the game, which is always good. It's something that Skaven's very good at, and you'll want to do a lot. The next ability, Allegiance ability, is Too Quick to Hit. This isn't anything too crazy, it's just taking less chip damage overall, which is really nice, and you will probably be retreating your infantry a lot. Not a lot I can say about this one, except one little nice thing is a lot of your best little foot heroes are infantry. They have the infantry keyword, so those 5 wound foot heroes, they may have a few wounds on them, and you can retreat them anyway, using this ability, which is very nice. Yeah, not much else to say about it, but overall it's not bad. And finally, we have 3 claw steps ahead. This rule is so strong, it's unbelievably strong. You get a free move in your opponent's hero phase every battle round. It's so good. It makes the pick a unit battle tactics so much harder for your opponent and allows you to be aggressive, knowing you can move a protective screen forward in your opponent's turn. 10 out of 10 ability for sure. It's so good at denying battle tactics and punishing your opponent for being lazy. You'll see a lot of abilities like this for Skaven. We're a very techie army with lots of movement tricks. Speaking of movement tricks, let's talk holes. Gnaw holes. The gnaw hole is where a lot of our power as an army really comes from. You get 3 of them at most over the course of the game, and you can always get more even if your opponent breaks them, which definitely will happen. They're not very durable. They have 2 main abilities on their war scroll that make them strong. The first is the teleport, which kicks our flexibility and our skill ceiling way into the stratosphere. Multiple free on-demand teleports to synchronize with our charge bonuses and our shooting and give us free mobility. Yes please GW, more of that. It's great for stealing objectives, offensive and defensive plays, and for getting quick bore and easy board control. The next ability is the summon. For only 1 command point, we can bring back a unit at half strength. This really is a game changer for Skaven. In previous battle tomes, our biggest weakness was our poor late game and our inconsistencies, and a lot of our strength as an army now comes from our recursion, which gives us a good late game. On this slide, I've also included several tips on null hole placement, and my buddy over at Warpfire Minis just released a video on null hole masterclass, so go ahead and check that out. All of these abilities start to make it clear that Skaven is an army where you really need to be one step ahead of your opponent. No major damage or stat boosting allegiance abilities here, just a lot of tools for the toolbox, which is really what you want with Skaven. Your buffs usually come from spell lores, enhancements, and heroes. Up next, we have the battle formations, as we must now call them. These are all pretty solid, though I think the best ones are the Pestilence one and the Molder one. The Molder one is your go-to for buffing our best melee troops, since our best melee troops are all Molder. So for lists that want to fight, this is really what you want to play. Pestilence is interesting. As of this video, the first FAQ has come out, and the Pestilence subfaction did not get touched. So the ability essentially gives you 3 free murder lusts at the end of every turn, and you can do this after you resurrect a unit through the null hole, which makes this the best subfaction by far. Scryer is a free +1 to wound on a 2+, so decently reliable, great for your Scryer shooting troops. And Verminous is a sweet +1 to rend on the charge for Verminous units, which works on the Vermin Lords, Screech, and the Warbringer, which really helps them more than I think our Verminous troops. It's great with Clan Rats and Storm Vermin alike, though. Still good. I've also listed some power pairs for each subfaction, basically just the units you would want to bring. So overall, our subfactions are really not bad. They're really well balanced. I think all 4 of them have play. Some of them are more just brute buffs and strength rather than good tech, which is what the Pestilence one is, but overall they're all quite good. Up next, we have the enhancements, starting with the heroic traits. These range from amazing to just okay. The first one is Skilled Manipulator, which is just a simple clean 4-up pass-off. It's an okay choice to make your hero more durable, though you'll feel the effect less on large heroes because most of our large heroes already have 5-up wards. And the difference between a 4-up pass-off and a 5-up ward, I feel like you probably just take the 5-up ward since the damage is getting negated rather than getting transferred. The next one is Scurry Away. This gives any hero a 3-up chance to just retreat out of combat instead of fighting, which is game-changing for any of our fast monster heroes. Vermin Lords absolutely love this command trait. This ability also combines exceptionally well with the Vermin Lord Deceiver. It makes him almost impossible to pin down, and I will talk about that more later. The last one is Short Tempered. This is the simplest one yet. It's just purely an aura of +1 to run and +1 to charge. We do already have some charge bonuses in this army, so +3 to charge potentially with the Master Molder bonus is pretty solid. So overall, our heroic traits are really not too bad. Pretty good. Up next are the artifacts, and these are really not bad at all. The first one is Foul Hide, which heals the wielder D3 at the end of every turn. It's a great choice for a Vermin Lord or a Grey Seer on Bell or Plague Priest on Plague Furnace, any hero that really just wants to be in combat a lot, just to give it a little bit of extra durability. So not bad. Up next is Warpstone Charm. This gives an enemy unit -1 to save on a 3-up. Super strong. You could get Storm Vermin up to an effective Rend 3 on the charge with this if they're in the Verminous subfaction, and you get the Warbringer on Rend 4 in his subfaction, or the Deceiver Rend 4 anyway, though I think that's more of a meme than actually good, but it's pretty fun. It's a fun one for sure. The Warpstone Charm. What even is save stacking? The last one is Skaven Brew. It's powerful once per game, gives any unit +1 attacks for the rest of the turn. It synergizes super well with most of our melee bruiser troops, Storm Fiends and Storm Vermin, and even Plague Monks get great use out of this. Use it wisely though, because it is a once per game. Moving on to our spells. All 3 of these are pretty good, in my opinion. They give us access to good tech, as well as options to hinder our opponent's game plan. So the first one is Skitter Leap. The first one that I want to talk about is Skitter Leap, because it's my favorite. It teleports a hero for free. No fuss, free movement. Hey, I like it. Skitter Leap. Now including Thankful in the wagons, by the way. It doesn't have a wound barrier anymore, which is super nice. Super strong in combination, especially with magical intervention, so you can teleport a hero to safety after your opponent chooses a battle tactic that involves killing said hero. The 2 GTs that I've been to already this year, Thankful, Skitter Leaping out of combat, gave so many opponents heartburn. Up next is Warp Gale, which is a super strong long range strike last at 18 inches with a casting value of 7. Great for multi-charging melee units on your turn, or for punishing your opponent with a magical intervention. The spell has so many opportunities to give opponents headache. And then the last one is Wither, which is our unlimited spell. It's a D3 Mortal Wound zap, which is nice. If you have like 3 or 4 wizards, you can dogpile Mortal Wounds on a unit to kill it, which is pretty cool. But otherwise, it's just nice to free a unit from being stuck in combat in the hero phase. So, not too bad at all. The prayers are all good, but there's a caveat here. Most of our priests are not good. So, unfortunately, you're rarely going to get to use these as much as you would want. But all the prayers are really good, and if you do want to run our priests, hey, you'll get some good value. Filth Crust is the best one by far. It's a +1 to wound melee buff that helps all of our dudes that all wound on 5s and 3s. If you get the enhanced version, it also gives crit mortal for your buckets of dice, which is super strong. Very good. Since most of our stuff throws buckets of dice, fishing for 6s is a viable strategy for dealing damage with this army. So, not bad at all. Bile Torrent is the worst one. It's just a 5-up horde breaker, or if you get the enhanced version, it's a 4-up horde breaker. It's really not bad, but it's got a short range and the use cases is relatively small. So most people are running like elite cavalry right now, or not really hordes of dudes. So it's not super amazing, but not bad. Rabid Tough is good and bad. It's good because -1 to be wounded and +1 save is good. But it's bad because we don't really have any great units that want to absorb this. Our best unit that can absorb this is Storm Fiends, because it does make them, you know, if you get the enhanced version, it makes them a 3-up save, -1 to be wounded, which is very durable. But Storm Fiends are really expensive and you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get this. And most of the rest of our units are so fragile that +1 to save and -1 to be wounded isn't really going to increase their durability a ton. So it looks really good on paper, but I found the use cases to be somewhat small. So overall, the prayers are not bad, but like I said, you'll probably not be able to utilize them to their fullest potential with our mediocre priest options. Up next are the war scrolls, and this will probably be the longest section of the video, so strap in, baby. Before I talk about the war scrolls, I guess I should mention the manifestation lore really quickly. They all cast on 7s, which is not amazing. The only notable thing here is that the Warpling Vortex casts on an 18, or casts with an 18-inch range, which is really big, but that's about it. That's all that can really be mentioned here. So, talking about the actual manifestations themselves, the first one is Bell of Doom, and I do really like this thing. -1 to wound is nice, but like I said previously, a lot of our stuff is so frail that even a -1 to wound is not like gonna make it, it's not going to be a huge help, and it is infantry only, so a lot of our big like actually durable units like the Vermin Lords and the Bells cannot get this. It is the best spell in our spell lore, and if you do play our manifestation lore, this is the main reason why you're playing it. But unless we get some more infantry that actually has durability, I don't really see a reason to run our manifestation lore. Vermintide is pretty good. It's just a big endless spell that takes up a lot of space and is annoying to remove, which makes it good. It does 0 damage basically, but you're using it to tie stuff up anyway, and it will do that very well. So it's not bad, but in a world where you can get stuff like Gravetide or Gnashing Jaws in other spell lores that are large, durable, and deal damage, Vermintide is just outclassed. And Warplaning Vortex, this one is really difficult to use. You have to generally cast it behind your opponents to get good value out of it because of the -2 to run and -2 to charge. You don't want to cast it in front because your opponent can just walk up to it and charge it because it's a static endless spell. So you have to be careful when playing it that you don't give your opponents easy charges from it. So you really can only cast it behind them, and then they move away from it, and then the mortal wound proc that's any hero phase just doesn't do anything. So I'm not a fan of this endless spell at all. I think it's the worst one in our endless spell lore, and I think it's really hard to use, and generally it's more of a trap. So pretty mediocre. So let's move on to stuff that I actually care about. The first one is Thankful. He is amazing. I would call him an auto include. People debate whether he's an auto include or not. I think he is. His spell is so strong. 13 inches, stopping commands until the start of your next turn. Potentially that's 2 turns if they double of no commands, which is really strong. For example, what you can do with him is he's sitting on an objective. If there's a unit nearby it that could redeploy to steal it, you can cast a spell on it, stop them from redeploying, then skitter leap away to another objective, and that way Thankful by himself has grabbed 2 objectives this turn, one that he was already on, and then the one he just teleported to. He does decent damage. 6 attacks at Ren 2/3 is not bad. It is 4s and 2s, and his other profile's 4s and 4s, so he's really swingy. You're probably not going to rely on him to kill anything too crazy. He just can help clear a unit if you dogpile it with a whole bunch of stuff. His shooting is not bad, even though it's damage 1, because it's 2s and 3s Ren 2. We have a lot of Ren 2 shooting in Skaven, and it all like adds up together, and you can focus down units pretty quickly. He's our most durable monster hero. He's a little slow at 8-inch move, but overall, he just does so many nice things. He's got a lot of chip damage between his shooting and his Hordebreaker spell, and stopping commands means no all-out defense, so the Ren 2 is a lot more meaningful. His Rampage is a D3 Mortal Wound kick, which is not bad. He's also our only casting bonus, which really goes a long way, because since Skitter Leap casts on a 6, it means that you only need a 6 on the dice when you're using Magical Intervention to cast it, because he's +1, which offsets the -1 cast. So he's just really, really, really good. Like I said on the slide here, you need to play him to the fullest to get his value. He should be doing basically everything that he can do, but at 360 points, he's just insane. He does so much stuff. Moving on, we got Lord Screech Vermin King. I like him, but he's too expensive. So he does a lot of cool stuff. He's our he's a really good synergy piece. He can give +1 to charge, he can give +1 to cast, he can give +1 to hit, +1 rend, +1 to chant, healing. So he's got a lot of cool stuff that he can do for free. His Rampage is just roar, but it can only target infantry, which is a little sad. He's pretty fighty. I think he's about the same damage as the Warbringer. Crit 2 hit is basically free +1 to hit, so if you give him +1 to hit, he's a little bit punchier than the Warbringer, though the Warbringer can like spike randomly because he's got crit mortal. I like Screech. He's just way too expensive. 430 is ludicrous when you think about the other big like centerpiece monster heroes that are similar cost. You've got the Great Unclean one, which is twice as durable as this guy. You've got Bellicor, which just does so much more. 430 is just too much, especially for how fragile he is. 13 wounds on a 4-up, 5-up is not as durable as it seems, especially in this edition. He still dies to basically any good hammer. So I like him, but I probably wouldn't play him until he gets a points drop. Up next is the Verminlord Deceiver, and he is the best Verminlord by far. It's not close. So he's very, very, very mobile. You give him Scurry Away always, and when he gets charged, there's a 3-up chance to just scurry away out of combat, and then a 4-up chance to just teleport to a completely new combat. So he's also almost impossible to pin down for your opponents. He's got a good shooting attack, 6 attacks, Rend 1, 2. He's got okay melee at 8 attacks, Rend 3, 2. He's more of a scalpel than a hammer, because Rend 3 with crit mortal, you're going to cut through and assassinate basically any small to medium-sized foot hero. You know, if he goes into a unit of Chosen, he's going to kill 3, maybe, and then die to them. So that's not what you use him for. He's a scalpel. His little redeploy 4 ability is cute. Like, if you're running Night Runners, you making them auto redeploy 4 is pretty good. It's not bad. It can make the Night Runners kind of hard to pin down, and they're already a pretty good unit. Yeah, I like the Deceiver a lot. He's definitely the best Verminlord. His Rampage is so insanely good. Even though it's a 4-up, you still do that every time. Like, even the chance to just teleport to a new combat is so strong. And yeah, he's great. Nothing more to say about him. I just love him. Up next is the Corruptor, who I don't love. He's got the similar combat profile to the Deceiver, but he's got one less rend and crit auto wound instead of crit mortal, which makes him the weakest vermin lord in combat, not counting the warp seer, because the warp seer shouldn't be in combat. But the problem with the vermin lord corruptor is they designed his war scroll to want him to get into combat, because he's got a rampage that only triggers if he's in combat, and he's got his Lord of the Great Plague ability is short range because it's all 13, so he wants to be near combat, but he just doesn't do any damage. Like I said, he'll run into a unit of chosen and kill maybe two. Like, he's not good. He's a unit that's designed to be a hammer that doesn't deal any damage. Sure, he's fast, he's a priest, but he's like 360 points for being a priest 1, which already limits his usability because he doesn't get access to stuff like skitter leap or strike last. So avoid him like the plague, pun absolutely intended. Up next is the warbringer. I like the warbringer personally. I don't think he's amazing. He's okay. He's good enough in melee that you can use him as a hammer. You know, he'll run into a unit of cavalry. If he's got warpstone charm, he'll lift 4 of them or 5 of them. You know, unit of agrodons, he'll kill 4 of them probably. He's really not bad. A little swingy maybe. His monstrous rampage is really only good into monsters, and it's really only good if he partially kills a monster. And then he can finish it off with the killing blow, but the killing blow, because it's d6 mortal wounds, it's kind of unreliable. So he's decent for his points cost. He's decently fast, he's decently punchy, he's a 1-cast wizard, he can absorb Scurry Away and Warpstone Charm. His Tyrant of Battle ability doesn't really do much, because you're already super command point hungry in Skaven, using all out attack in both the shooting phase and combat phase, using redeploy, using unleash spell, magical intervention. I refuse to call it magical intervention when unleash spell exists. It sounds much funnier. But like I said, Skaven is a super command point hungry army, so you're not spending 2 command points in the combat phase to give 2 all out attacks. If he could use this on himself, I would like it, but because he's not infantry, he can't. So no. His Tyrant of Battle ability is almost useless. So he basically reads as a 1-note melee monster with a niche but sometimes good rampage. For 360, it's probably too much for him, but I still like him because he's my pet unit. But he's probably not all there. Another one who's probably not all there is the Vermin Lord Warpseer. My pet peeve with this guy is he's got a combat phase rampage that wants him to be in combat because it gives strike last, and then he does 0 damage in combat because he's got 6 attacks that hit on 4s. He's really swingy in melee. Divine the Future, his add 2 inches to 3 claw steps ahead is good, but it's not 360 points good, and his spell is also really good, but he's got no casting bonuses. His spell casts on a 7, and he's really fighting for space in the same space that Thanquol would take in your list, like an expensive double caster support piece. And Thanquol, I find, just does a lot more than this guy. Thanquol hits harder, Thanquol has a better spell, he's got a shooting attack that's not bad. He's got a rampage that ends up doing about the same because the Warpseer is going to do like 4 damage. Thanquol's stomp will do 2 or 3, and then he'll also fight. Just play Thanquol. There's no reason not to. Then we got the Grey Seer on Screaming Bell. This guy is the king of I would love him if he was cheaper. My pet peeve with this guy, again, as it has always been, is the Peal of Doom ability being a table of buffs and then you roll for it. Just give him a -1 to hit aura. I don't care if you have to roll for it, if it's a 3-up -1 to hit or a 2-up -1 to hit aura. Just make it a -1 to hit aura. That's all I want for him. He's a little bit fighty, which is kind of funny. He's got like 11 attacks at damage 2 and 3 attacks at damage D3, so He could surprise your opponent by doing some damage. His spell is bad, and his Altar of the Horned Rat is too small an aura to actually be usable. If it was Skaven Infantry Wholly Within 13 had a Ward 6, I would love this guy. I would probably play him in most of my lists, because a 6-up ward and potentially -1 to be hit while doing damage and being a double caster and being very durable, he would do a lot. But it's very hard to keep our stuff wholly within 6 of him, and the -1 to hit aura being as random as it is, he's not terrible, but not impressive. He's got good regiment options though, I guess. I don't know. If he goes down 40 points, maybe I give him a try. But right now, once again, just run Thankful. And then we got the Plague Priest on Plague Furnace. This guy is just sad. Like 340 points, I think, is how much he costs. And he's a Priest 1. And he's got a really, really cute -1 to ward rolls for enemy units within 6 aura. And he fights okay, I guess. There's just really no reason to play him. He gives your Pestilence units a ward. Your Pestilence units are all so glass that a 6-up ward is not going to save them remotely. -1 to ward roll is good into certain armies, but I'm not paying 360 points for it. I'd rather the -1 to ward be like a spell that's a silver bullet, or like a once per game artifact that completely takes away the ward or something like that. You're not paying 360 points for a durable priest, in my opinion, in this army. Your hero slots are really, really important, and you've got heroes that just do so much more than this guy. Not a fan of him generally. Maybe if he goes down, I'll give him a try. Maybe if we get my other issue that I want to talk about real quick is right now manifestations are so strong that priests, I think, unless you have invocations, priests are just not super good, because manifestations are better. Like, manifestations count as units. If you're bringing a manifestation lore, you're basically bringing 3 free units to your army, and you want wizards to cast manifestations. So unless they make it so priests can summon manifestations like universally, or they give Skaven invocations, which won't happen, or they nerf the hell out of manifestations, I just don't see priests being very good in an army that doesn't have invocations. So overall, this guy does not spark joy. One guy who does spark joy is the Great Seer on foot. He's got good regiment options. He's really cheap. He's like 120. He casts a manifestation at 3d6, dropping the lowest dice, and that's all you need him to do. He's a cheap wizard that casts a spell well and has good regiment options. Need I say more? He's like an auto-include. Probably not auto-include, but he's really, really good. I'm bringing him in about half of my lists. Arch Warlock, really, really good too if I'm running a Scryer list. He is a wizard 1, which is awesome. He's a little expensive for being a 1-cast wizard. He's 170. I mean, a lot of that cost is coming from Overseers of the Engine Covens. When Scryer units use cover fire, they don't suffer -1 to hit, which is really strong. Skaven is one of the better armies in the game at cover firing, because we have jales at 24-inch range, or acolytes that do crazy damage. So Arch Warlock is definitely really, really good. Because the Scryer units are all pretty decent, and any regiment can include clan rats, he's got decent regiment options. He's really good if you're running jales or acolytes. He can be okay with storm fiends. And he's a 1-cast wizard. So like, I like him. He's pretty good. Engineer is fine. If you're making a teams list that wants to have the ability to snipe heroes, like you're planning to fight a lot of Lumineth and a lot of Seraphon and a lot of other Skaven, he's pretty good. But hero sniping is niche, because a lot of armies just don't have heroes that you'd want to snipe. Especially with jales, because they do so much damage that you just want to shoot at their units anyway, or their monster heroes, which you don't need Ignore Guarded Hero to snipe monster heroes. So his use is somewhat niche. He's not bad. He's only 20 points cheaper than the Arch Warlock, and the Arch Warlock is also a wizard. So I probably would not run this guy over the Arch Warlock for the time being. Maybe if he gets cheaper. He's a decent inclusion, but I don't love him. This guy's fun. The Warlock Bombardier. He's got 2 attacks, 4s and 3s, Rend 1, D6, and he can set his damage characteristic to D3 plus 3, and he can get +1 to hit for free. So if you want a hero that does nothing and then maybe once a game does 12 damage, here you go. But the fact that he doesn't give a buff of any kind and he's just a hero that shoots, no, not in Skaven. Maybe in some other army, but in Skaven you want your heroes to be wizards or give a buff of some kind. So generally I would avoid this guy, even though he's a lot of fun. Good meme though. Thank you, GW. We got the Clawlord on Gnaw Beast up next. He's a mounted foot hero. What does he do? Pick a friendly non-hero Verminous unit, infantry unit, wholly within 13. They add 5 to control score. Most of your Verminous units are mobs of rats that already have a high control score. So he's a mounted hero that does nothing. Avoid him. Don't play him. We have a couple of heroes like this in Skaven, where they just are non-wizard, non-priest, mounted or foot heroes that don't give a buff. And GW really loves designing heroes like this for some reason. And almost never in the history of ever have they been good. So keep designing them, I guess, GW. Maybe you'll get it right one day. But no, I would probably not play this guy. Up next is the regular clawlord on foot. He's got one of those pick a non-hero Verminous infantry unit that hasn't fought and then it fights after him. If he gave +1 to hit or +1 to wound or something like that, I actually wouldn't mind him, because he can do a little bit of damage and he could hold Warpstone Charm. So you could get that -1 save and then drag the clan rats or the storm vermin in to fight after him. But he doesn't give a buff. They just fight after him. So you're getting 2-4 damage and then the storm vermin are fighting? Probably not. He's a little bit more usable than the Clawlord on mount because of the Warpstone Charm combo that I talked about, which makes him not completely useless, but still, this is Skaven. You have cheap wizard foot heroes. Why would you not run a wizard? Our spells are amazing. Then we got the Deathmaster. If we ever get any like Eshin warbands that are good, or Night Runners get a crazy points drop and the Deceiver gets a points drop, I could actually see him being played because run, shoot, and charge is good, especially with units that are already decently fast because they're all 7-inch move. And he's actually kind of hard to kill because of his unmodified hit rolls of 1 through 4 don't affect him. So, you know, he could randomly go up to the Glotkin and take 0 damage because the Glotkin just completely fails to hit him. His shooting attack's not bad, 5 attacks, D3 with crit auto, and shoot in combat. So I say avoid on this slide, and I think I still stand by that. He's probably not good. I think I also still stand by he's cute, I guess. But this guy has like a big, you know, it's avoid, but there's a big old asterisk. Like, if Eshin stuff, we get some proper good Eshin troops, like maybe a Warcry warband that's gutter runners or something, then I could see him maybe getting played. But as of right now, with Night Runners being very niche, not very good, and the Deceiver being at best as a solo operator, I wouldn't run this guy. Finally, a foot hero I would run, the Master Molder. So he has one use. He picks a Molder unit and they get +2 to charge. That's a good buff. That's a really good buff. Most of our Molder units are kind of slow, so sending them through a gnaw hole and only needing a 7 on the dice to charge out of Deep Strike, pretty good. If you really want to do like a big Alpha Strike list, you could run him with Short Tempered and get a +3 to charge, which is pretty good. He's a foot hero that doesn't, you know, he's not a wizard, but he does give a buff. Therefore, he's good. He's also our cheapest foot hero. He's 100 points. So if you're running a Molder list, I would say this guy is a great inclusion because he makes your regiments easier. He's a super cheap hero. And he does 2 good things. He heals 3 to a Molder unit, wholly within 13, good range. And he picks a Molder unit within combat range to give +2 to charge. He does two good things and is very cheap. Therefore, good foot hero. Let's start talking about some of our units. First up is Storm Fiends. I like Storm Fiends. I think they're fun, but I think their best use is something you probably didn't expect them to do. You expect them to be like a reinforced unit of 6, and then you throw a bunch of buffs on them and watch them annihilate everything they touch, or shoot everything off the board, or take 0 damage. They can do that, like that is an option, but I think their best unit is you run 1 or 2 of them, like non-reinforced in any list, and you use them when your opponents walk forward off the back objectives. You deep strike them in their turn, steal those objectives, and then they go and kill all the foot heroes because they're like kind of decent in combat and they got a lot of Rend too. So they're good skirmishers for sure. They can sometimes do a little bit of damage with shooting, but I think melee Storm Fiends is the way to run them. As for Shock Gauntlets versus Doomflayer Gauntlets, I think the math on Shock Gauntlets is technically a little bit better, but Rend 2 versus Rend 1 and 5 attacks with charge +1 damage, the Doomflayer Gauntlets are just going to feel so much more consistent to you, I promise you. Like, I've played literally dozens of games with both variants of Storm Fiends. Shock Gauntlets have never once made me think, wow, I think these guys might be better than Doomflayer Gauntlets. Just play Doomflayer Gauntlets. As for the shooting, whether you're going to run wind launchers or Warpfire projectors have shooting combat. Run Warpfire projectors, trust me. Like, hitting on 2s, wounding on 4s is better than 4s and 3s. Rend 2 damage 1 is worse than Rend 2 damage D3, but 2d6 attacks, you're not expecting to do a ton of damage with the shooting attacks, so randomly you'll spike, get 9-10 attacks, do like 5 or 6 damage with their shooting, and hey, that's value. I think they're probably still an auto-include. They're very, very, very good. I think most lists could start with Thankful and 3 Storm Fiends, and then put whatever else in you want, and you'll have some amount of success. I like them a lot. They could probably afford to go down in points a little bit. 260 is a lot. They're not terribly durable for their points cost. It's 18 wounds on a 4-up. But overall, they're quite good. I might disagree with auto-include. Forgot to update my slides a little bit before I started recording this, so I'll point out if I have any disagreement with any of my slides. I would say maybe not auto-include for sure. You could argue auto-include for them, but either way, they're definitely good. Nobody's arguing that. They're definitely very good. Up next is Acolyte Globadiers, and these guys are interesting. They shoot decently. 1 attack 3/3 Rend 1 D3 with anti-infantry +1 Rend is pretty good. They get +1 damage against stuff that targets 10 or more models. So a unit of 10 of these with +1 to hit and +1 to wound, shooting at a mob of 10 or more infantry, they'll shred it completely. You know, it'll be like 8 attacks at Rend 1 D3 +1, which is a lot of damage. They are very fragile. I mean, 2 wounds each means they require some amount of effort to kill. And we do have a whole bunch of stuff that gives infantry -1 to be wounded or 6-up wards potentially. I think these are one of the guys that could actually maybe hug a Grey Seer on Screaming Bell, benefit from the 6-up ward, potentially benefit from a -1 to hit or a -1 to be wounded, and be annoying to kill. The Hidden Weapon Team ability will help them a lot against enemy snipers and stuff like that. Though, in my experience, most of my games, I'm running jales, and jales will just shoot the enemy shooting off before the enemy shooting gets to do anything, so I wouldn't worry about enemy shooting too much with Skaven because your shooting is just better. I think at 130 for 5, the globadiers are probably a little too expensive, but I think they're playable. They could be fun. Like I said on the slide, probably not worth it at their current points value, but not actively bad. If they go down 20 points, I definitely think that you could run these guys as a great little skirmish hammer unit. They do absorb a lot of good buffs, and they do pretty crazy damage when juiced up. So I don't hate them. I don't love them, but I don't hate them. Speaking of love, I love these guys. These guys are definitely auto-include jales. Every list simply starts like You run a 1700 point Skaven list. Every list in Skaven simply starts with 6 jales. They are auto include for sure. Like, nobody's debating that. They are easily the best unit in our book. They have 24-inch range. They do great damage. They do like 10 to 12 damage at 24 inches. They have crit auto wound, which helps them be a little bit more consistent. They get a free +1 to hit in your shooting phase, which is really nice. They're just amazing. Like I say on the slide, standing still for +1 to hit isn't an issue when you have 24-inch range. They're easily our best war scroll. You can pair them with a warlock engineer to get some hero snipe. You can pair them with an arch warlock to cover fire better. They're infantry, so you can bring them back if you somehow let your opponent get to them and kill them, which you shouldn't. They should just be in your backline shooting every turn, and every other turn too with covering fire. They will do so much work for you. There's some matchups that are just simply decided by you having 12 jales or having 6 jales. They are just so insanely good. Every list simply starts with these guys. I cannot restate that enough. Warpfire thrower. I don't have much to say about it. It's like 90 points. It's terrible. It does no damage. Just play a unit of storm fiends if you want a Warpfire thrower gun, or a unit of rat ogres if you want a Warpfire thrower gun. There is no power here. You know, you'll notice I list power pairs on everyone. There is no power here. There's no power pairs for this guy. It's just bad. Don't play it. Moving on. Same story with the rattling gun. It's bad. Don't play it. Moving on. The Doomflare. Actually not bad. I like this thing. It's in a few of my lists. Because it's very, very fast and requires some amount of effort to kill. And because it can randomly do like 12 damage to a chaff unit or to like a skirmish cavalry unit. I like this thing. It's really fast, so it can be really annoying with 3 claw steps ahead because it moves on average like 11 inches. I like it. I think this thing is pretty good. It's useful for getting tactics. It's great for take the flanks turn 1. It's great for take the flanks late game. It's great for take their land if you need it. Honestly, I like this thing purely as just a little tactics guy. And, you know, he does a non-zero amount of damage. He probably wins a fight against a foot hero. So I like him. He's pretty good. Warplaning Cannon. I like this thing too. It's not bad. It's not amazing. But it's definitely the best of your 3 artillery pieces for sure. 20-inch range is good. 2d6 attacks is random, but when you overcharge it, it's 2d6 plus 6. If you all-out attack it, it does like 10 mortal wounds on average, which is really good. It blows itself up after 2 turns of overcharging on average, but I find myself running the Primal Energy lore quite often. And auto 3 heal from Life Swarm will make this thing get to shoot maybe 3 or 4 times before it blows up, which on average 10 mortal wounds a turn. If this thing puts out 30 or 40 mortal wounds into your opponent's army before it dies, it's definitely getting its value. So I don't know what kind of list you run this guy in. I don't think you run more than 1 because you can only overcharge 1 per turn, but I like it. Like, it's not bad. It's definitely terrifying, I will say that. Like, your opponent will the first time you do 10 11 mortal wounds to your opponent by shooting this thing and just clean an entire unit off in one go, they'll respect it and they'll put a lot in to try to kill it. So especially if we start to see more armies spam high armor stuff that isn't like super wound dense, I think this guy will definitely get some great value. You could definitely play it. You know, it's definitely not amazing. You know, it's a bit random, kills itself pretty quickly. I've had it do 4 mortal wounds and blow itself up immediately. But if you're the kind of, you know, if you're the kind of person that's enjoyment comes solely from rolling good dice and having consistency, you're not going to like this thing. But if you're, you know, Timmy and you want to see the big thing do the funny thing, here you go. This thing will do it. So overall, it's not bad. The Warp Blaster, the slightly less entertaining cousin of the Warpling Cannon. It does less damage overall into good armor saves. It does slightly more damage into bad armor saves, but it's also way swingier. 6d6 plus 3 attacks when you overcharge it. could be, you know, almost 30 attacks, could be a little more than 10. It's funny. I think you could run one of these in one of the Warplaning Cannons if you want. If you want to use artillery. My issue with this guy is he's just too expensive. He's 190, which is more expensive than a Warplaning Cannon. I just think I mean, he's good at killing screens, this Warp Blaster is, and then you send your Rat Ogres or your Storm Fiends in, or your Warbringer to do some melee work. It's definitely not bad. I think it's just too expensive for its output. If it goes down 20 or 30 points, I would be a fan of it. It does look awesome, though, so if you want to play just the stuff that looks cool, go ahead. I won't stop you. But I think competitively, he's not very good. Up next is the Doom Wheel. I miss this thing, dude. Back when in 3rd edition, when you could proc Rolling Doom 1,000,000 times from piling in so many times and do like 15 mortal wounds, that was so fun. But not anymore. They killed this thing completely. It just doesn't do anything. You can't overcharge its shooting anymore, so it does no shooting damage. It's not good in melee. Rolling Doom is just bad now. It's just, you can only pick up a maximum of 3 units, and it's a bad D3. It's a 2-up D3. It's just disappointing at every... This War Scroll just does the opposite of Spark Joy. It sucks away all the joy. It's not good. Don't play it. It's terrible. It's one of our worst War Scrolls, with, like, alongside the Rattling Gun. Rat Ogres. I like these guys. I play them in most of my lists. They are the most efficient melee unit we have. You can get some crazy bonuses to attacks on them. You can get, with Skaven Brew and Unleashed Warp Fury and the Molder buff, you can get potentially +3 attacks. Just be careful, these guys are only 4 wounds, and 2 of those 3 sources do D3 mortal wounds to them, so you might lose a Rat Ogre. And because there are only 6 in a reinforced unit, that's like 8 attacks that you're losing if you kill one, so be careful with these guys. They're super, super, super fragile. They are like the textbook definition of a glass cannon. But the cannon part's pretty solid, you know, with maximum, or with semi-reliable maximum juice, like Unleashed Warp Fury and the Molder buff. They're throwing 42 attacks on probably 3s and 3s, Rend 1-2, so they do quite a bit of damage, especially in combination with Thankful Spell. If you're blocking all out defense, it means that you're putting, you know, the average save is like a 4-up or a 3-up in this edition. Putting them to a 4-up or a 5-up means they're probably going to take like 30 damage from these guys, 30 to 40 damage, so they're a great unit. Just as an example, at a GT that I went to last weekend, I threw them into a unit of 10 Slickblade Seekers and they lifted 7 of them. So definitely solid damage, great looking models. So if you want to play stuff that's cool and is also good, Rat Ogres. Yeah, nothing more to say about these guys. They're great. Their shooting attack is good. Their melee attack is good. They can get +2 to charge, potentially +3 to charge. They do oodles of damage. That's what you need them to. So, great unit. Hellpet Abomination. I like this guy, but he's way too expensive. He's ludicrously expensive. 270 is criminally overcosted for this guy. I think he needs to be like 220, maybe 210. But he does do good damage. He's got Rend 3 against infantry. He's got 13 attacks, which is punchier than most of the Vermin Lords. So if you all out attack him, he does do like 16, 18 damage, I think, on average into infantry, which is good. I think the reason he costs so much is because he heals a lot, and he's got the too horrible to die thing, which it's a 5 or a 6 he stands back up. It's not going to happen all the time. If it does happen, it's hilarious, but he can be somewhat annoying to kill, especially if you roll the 5-up ward from the Molder buff thing on him, because then he's 14 wounds on a 5-up, 5-up, and he heals D6, potentially D6 +3 if you've got a Master Molder nearby. So he heals a ton, but the problem is he's 14 wounds on a 5-up save. So, like, most hammers in the game are just going to one-shot him, you know, unless it's alive, too horrible to die ability triggers. So, like, he's swingy and cute. He's probably, you know, pretty good if he goes down 50 or 60 points, but at 270, hell no, you're not playing him. He's way too expensive. Clan Rats. They have a 5-up save and they heal models, which is nice. They're good chaff. 20 models, They heal D3 end of every turn. They actually kind of do damage. They're definitely, like, stat-wise, the best screen that we have. The problem is just 160 points are insane for these guys. They used to cost 100 last edition. And I know, like, they're figuring the numbers out. You know, it's new edition, new stuff. They're figuring out what they want to do for everything. Right now, I would just play Plague Monks because Plague Monks blow up when they die and they cost 20 less points. And you're definitely bean counting points in Skaven. A lot of your stuff is a little overcosted and pretty expensive. So I like Clan Rats. I just like Monks better. I probably would not play Clan Rats right now if you have the choice to play Monks. You can play Clan Rats. They're not actively bad. They're just really expensive. Like 40 Clan Rats, 2 screens is 320 points, which is almost how much a Vermin Lord costs. Most of the Vermin Lords are 360. So like 60 Clan Rats is more expensive than an entire God model for us. So yeah, just put that into context. Like, Clan Rats are really expensive. I don't hate them though. They're definitely playable. They're just not amazing. I would probably play Monks over them. Storm Vermin. These guys are neat. They do tons of damage when you buff them up. You give them +1 attack, +1 rend on the charge, +1 to hit and wound. You know, they're like, a unit of 20 is going to be 80 attacks at rend 2, which is a lot of damage. The problem with them is they're very squishy and they're somewhat expensive. And my other pet peeve with these guys is they got like the worst version of the infantry that gives something a ward. I wish they were like Saurus Guard, where they gave themselves and the nearby hero a 5-up ward. Instead, they just give Skaven infantry heroes a 5-up ward while they're within combat range, which is really not great. Most of our Skaven heroes are like 5 wounds on a 6-up save, so they're gonna die if anything touches them. We did just get new Storm Vermin models, and our Battle Tome is probably going to come in a few months, so maybe these guys get a bit of a glow up, but right now, I think they're just not all there for me. I think GW is struggling to figure out what these guys' role is, whether they're a hammer, an anvil, or a bodyguard unit. I say just make them an anvil. That's kind of what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be elite, durable melee fighters. Just get rid of the bodyguard thing. Skaven, like, bodyguards are not thematic for us anyway. I don't care about bodyguards. Give us like rats that do damage. Anyway, I don't hate these guys, but I don't love them. They're just whatever. They don't spark joy exactly. Plague Monks definitely spark joy. In their subfaction, they're ludicrous. They're so good. I think a lot of lists want to be running 60 Plague Monks, and then you just tie everything up. You summon them through the null hole, tie everything up. They do decent damage actually because they're 2 attacks with crit auto wound. When they die, they blow up on a 6, so sometimes randomly a unit of 20 of them does like 4 mortal wounds when they blow up, and you'll kill a few guys. So they're jank, they're fun, their models are old and ugly, but who cares? They're great. Plague Monks, probably an auto include right now. They're 140 points for 20, which is actually not that expensive. It's decent for 20 bodies. You know, 6-up save, they're gonna die to anything, but there's a lot of stuff in the game that doesn't quite deal 20 damage, so I like these guys. They're great. Very, very playable. With the Pestilence jank, you can resurrect them through the null hole, wholly within 6 inches, and then you can trigger their 3-inch pile-in at the end of the turn, so you can walk into combat with something and tie it up, and then they just feel like an unstoppable tide of annoying little idiots when you're playing them, and I love them. They're definitely great. So yeah, Plague Monks, good out of 10. Plag Claw, bad out of 10. It's a hammer that doesn't do enough damage to be a hammer. It pairs all right with our melee units because it sometimes gives strike last, but the problem is it does so little damage, and it's 2 shots that hit on 3s, so it's like you're gonna miss one, and it's d6 damage, so it's gonna get 1 through. If they, you know, fail the save, it's gonna do 3 damage, and then you have a 50% chance of a strike last, which you have a strike last spell already. I don't think you need another form of strike last, and this thing costs the same as 3 jales. It does less damage than 3 jales at the same range. Just run jales. There's no reason to run this thing. If it goes down 20 or 30 points, maybe I could see it being played because 2d6 damage is funny, but I don't love it. It doesn't exactly spark joy. I think competitively this thing is probably a trap. It's whatever. Night Runners. I actually like these guys. I think they're fun. Competitively, I think they're pretty strong. They have a pre-game move, which is good with 7 inches. It makes take the flanks really, really easy with these guys. They have a decent shooting attack, actually. 2 attacks, force, no rend 1 with crit auto, and shoot in combat. So a unit of 10 is throwing 20 dice with crit auto. A unit of 20 is throwing 40 dice with crit auto. Or they have a champion, so actually 41. So they definitely, against, you know, mediocre armor, can do quite a bit of damage. They also have crit mortal in melee, which means that in melee they can surprisingly do a bunch of damage. They're horrible, old, stupid monkey rat models, but, you know, I think as far as 130 point units go for 130 points for 10 guys, they're fast, they shoot all right, and they can't be targeted by enemy shooting while they're near terrain, which is cute. With the deceiver, they can auto redeploy 4, which makes them difficult to pin down. They have a 7-inch move with 3 claw steps ahead. They can be difficult to pin down. They're just a great little fast skirmish unit that shoots decently. I think they're a decent inclusion for sure. So that was all the War Scrolls. Good job getting through it. Good job to me for getting through it as well. It's a lot of info, I know, but I hope that I gave you all some good info. So let's get into the sample lists. First one is my buddy's list. This is Warpfire Minis. This is the list that he's been playing lately. It's Thankful on Bone Ripper, 3 Storm Fiends, 6 Jales, Vermin Lord Deceiver, a unit of Night Runners, and then a Grey Seer on foot with 60 Plague Monks. This is a tech list. This is a list that is designed to tie up big hammers and score really well. It's kind of how Skaven plays now. We're a tech army, we're like a strong late game army, we're a close loss army or a small win. We're not going to get blowout victories against opponents. We're not going to table our opponents regularly. The way this army plays now is like Soulblight, or like how Khorne used to play. Like, we outscore and we just keep on keeping on and scoring as much as we can. And this list definitely does that very well. You know, it's not the greatest damage output, but you definitely have the damage. The Deceiver fights decently. Jales are good. Storm Fiends are swingy, but can be good in melee. Thankful is swingy, but can be good in melee. Plague Monks do decent chip damage, so against a list that's not very wound dense, you will definitely have the damage. You just want to chip away at the good enemy hammers and teleport around the edges and avoid combat and score as much as you can. So if you like techie control playstyle that scores a lot and endlessly frustrates your opponent, have fun. This is a good list for you. This next list is something that I took to a GT, and I went 4-1 with it. As opposed to the previous list, this one likes to fight a little bit more. You're running the Molder subfaction instead of the Pestilence subfaction. You have 2 units of Storm Fiends to buff and a unit of 6 Rat Ogres to buff. You've still got Thankful, you've still got Jales, you've just got Clan Rats instead of Plague Monks with this one, and you've got a lot of beef, a lot of Molder beef. So what this list is trying to do is a little bit more killy. You actually have damage to throw at your enemies. This list probably could table somebody if it wanted to. You've got great damage from the Rat Ogres, and the Storm Fiends with the Molder buff of +1 attack actually do quite a bit of damage because they have so many different profiles, and it's all Ren 2 multi-damage. I like this list. I still think it's fun. I don't think it's, you know, the most optimal way to play Skaven, probably. I think the most optimal way to play Skaven is a little bit more control-oriented and less damage, but I think this is definitely a fun list, and you could definitely take this to an RTT and go 3-0. Did it to a GT. I went 4-0 with this list. You could probably go I went 4-1 with this list. I don't think this list goes 5-0. I think there's too many bad matchups for it. You struggle into stuff like Lumineth with a bunch of -1 to hits. You struggle into stuff like Rule Boys that just avoids combat with you. You definitely struggle into stuff like Trogs because you just don't have enough damage to remove the big Troggoth units. But you'll bully most of the other mid to low tier armies that are not very durable with this list. And you do have some tech into stuff like Lumineth with your all the shooting from the Storm Fiends and Rat Ogres that hits on 2s. You know what, Ren 2, you've got lots of Ren 2 in this list, which is one thing. If you're playing against something that has bad armor like Slanesh or some types of Seraphon, you know, even stuff that's like Stormcast where it has good armor but it's not terribly wound dense, and you've got all this Rend 2, it's going to be pretty good into it. That's one thing I should probably mention a little bit more about Skaven. We just have a lot of Rend 2 shooting and a lot of Rend 2 melee, so our damage numbers aren't like super high, but because it's all Rend 2 and even some Rend 3, it's like good damage type, so we can definitely crack through armor and get our damage through. Nighthaunt is tough for us. It's tough for this list. It's tough for the last one because control just really struggles into stuff that's got retreat and charge, and all of our Rend 2 is wasted on Nighthaunt's 4-up. But, you know, I'm getting off topic a little bit, but I think this list is pretty good, and I just wanted to point out that we have a lot of Rend 2, which is very good. So yeah, those are my 2 example lists. I realized that it says example list 1 both times. I'm sorry. I can probably not edit that in post-production, so you guys will just have to live with it. You know, I'm new to YouTube. So, conclusion and army rating. I just made this little like blank out of 10. I think overall the army is good. It's got good paths to victory and a flexible game plan. Our damage is all right. I'd rate it at probably about a 6 out of 10. We have good focus fire damage if we want it. We probably not are going to be tabling. We are probably not going to be tabling most people unless they're super fragile. But we have damage when we need it. Our mobility is definitely top tier. We have teleports, we have deep strikes, we have 3 claw steps ahead. We've got fast units with 10-inch and 12-inch moves. We've got, like I said, teleports, deep strikes. We've got summoning that come out of gnawholes late game. And then we've got a couple units that are fast. It's just, we have so many options for mobility. We can get all over the place. We're definitely an army that can, you know, hold more objectives every single turn because we can just keep teleporting around to the different objectives. So very good there. Our durability is pretty bad. Like, clan rats are mildly durable. Storm fiends are moderately durable. The plague priest on furnace and the gray seer on bell can like take a punch. But most of our stuff is very glass. Like jales will die if they smell combat. Rat ogres will die if they get charged. Storm fiends are not, like a unit of 3 storm fiends will die to any proper hammer. All of our heroes are like 6-up save, 5 wounds. Even our vermin lords are only 13 wounds. We don't have a lot of minuses to hit or minuses to wound for them. So most of our stuff dies if it gets charged by a big hammer, which is why you see us playing like vermin lord deceiver, because he can scurry away or teleport to a different combat. Or we play the pestilence stuff to tie up our opponent's big hammers so they can't even get to us. Like, most of our stuff dies if it touches combat, so you want to be playing stuff that can either get out of combat with a teleport or a scurry away, or you want to tie up the opponent's big hammer so they can't get into combat in the first place. So our durability is poor, but we have counterplay for that, so it's okay. And like I say here, 8 out of 10, our ability to counterplay is amazing. We are so good at denying battle tactics. We are so good at denying our opponent. Like, anytime our opponent wants to do anything, we usually have at least one route to stopping it or hindering them in some way. Like magical intervention with a teleport away with Thankful to stop a battle tactic. I literally did that like 3 times at Gateway Open. My opponent picked slay the tyrant, you know, if they were order, or slay the entourage because Thankful's my general. And then I just unleash spell, skitter leap away to the other side of the map. Thankful's completely safe. That battle tactic's now impossible. 3 claw steps ahead, I move a unit forward to zone off another unit and then redeploy the other unit back. So like, we're just so good at counterplaying and so good at denying battle tactics for our opponents. It is definitely our biggest strength as an army. It is very hard for an opponent to score 50 points against us. Most of my games, like, I would score like in the mid 40s and my opponent would score in the 20s or 30s. Like, if I'm winning, and even when I'm losing, like, I played a game against Trogs, like meta Trogs. He had like 15 rock guts and Trug, and he won, but it was like 36-32 or 38-32 or something like that. Me scoring 32, him scoring 38. So a low scoring game for both of us. And the last thing is our late game is amazing because we have summoning now. We have teleports from our wizards. We have 3 claw steps ahead. We're just so fast, and we have the recursion to help us. Like, the thing that I've noticed with Skaven is because our armies are more expensive now, you look at your list and you're like, wow, it feels like our army is really small, but then you just keep getting more units throughout the game as your opponent is running out of units, and then pretty soon, by turn 4, it seems like your army is just like, your opponent's hopelessly outnumbered. Like, you have such a larger army than them because they've only got 2 or 3 units left, and you've still got like 7 because you've been summoning another one back every turn. The fact that our summoning is just 1 command point is so good. It's so consistent. Basically everything good in our army has the infantry keyword. So most, like, storm fiends and rat ogres and jales and clan rats and plague monks, it's all infantry, so all easily summonable back. So very, very good. Yeah, our late game is amazing. 7 out of 10 for sure. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you for tuning in and watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And I have more to come soon. Thank you.